Welcome to War Games on Toast, all of you lovely people. I am once again back talking about the latest edition of Warcry, and today I am once again talking about the allies. We are back talking about allies. Last time we did the Centaurian Marshal. This time we are doing the Fomoroid Crusher. Since most of the bespoke allies for Warcry are for the Chaos faction, we are going to focus on those, specifically the Fomoroid Crusher. There's another one. Oh, great, Myrmidon. What's the other one? And the Mind Stealer Spheranx. And yeah, so today we're talking about the big Mama Jamba itself, the Fomoroid Crusher. This is the big dude with the big stone. Here goes, bam, everyone dies. It's great, we're on top of that guy. But before we get into all of that, please consider dropping a like, hitting the subscribe button, and leaving a comment. The support the channel's gotten in the last month or two has been outstanding, and honestly, I love to see the community grow. We've gotten hundreds of comments. We're about to hit 200 subscribers. It's all been fantastic, and I'm excited to see where it goes, and I'm excited to talk about more things. So if you've got something you want to cover, want me to cover, let me know. I have pushed forward the allies videos because enough people asked for more allies videos, and here they are. So your wish has been granted as a New Year treat. Speaking of which, I hope everybody had a great holiday season, and hope everyone had a great New Year. I had a fantastic New Year. I took about a week off. It's been fun, and now I'm back, and we have a new setup. It's all fancy and cool. So yes, hopefully this is okay. And back to the video. So, what are Fomoroid Crushers? In short, Fomoroid Crushers are like indoctrinated slaves who live for one thing, and one thing only, and that thing is destruction. They are living siege weapons that were once masons, artisans, and crafts Fomoroids, and they were enslaved, and then they now take those once pristine skills for creation and flip it on their heads. They are now mindless monsters, I assume, of destruction. They tear down walls, everything from like walls from fortresses to buildings to gnarled oaks in the gnarlwood. They have a penchant for unmaking, and they're very cool as a result. So, new perspective. So, Fomoroid Crushers, for one, are surprisingly cheap. These things come in at a very low cost of about 260 points, if memory serves. They are incredibly strong, like strength 6, 4-8 damage, massively bulky, hard-hitting monsters. And bulk, again, is another thing. They have toughness 6 and 35 wounds. Great abilities, and they're surprisingly fast. Basically, the Crusher is good at a lot of things. It is a very good beat stick. It has a bit of utility in there. Very, very strong monster. Great. But there are some very, very strong, monstrous infantry ally. Is great, but it does have some weaknesses. The biggest one, starting off, is actually its reaction. It has a very weak reaction. And we'll go into it in a bit, but it's not very good. Its reach is only 1 inch, so all of that power, all of that strength is let down by the fact you've got to be within 1 inch to hit them. Other allies like the Myrmidon, as we'll talk about in another video, and the previously talked about Centaurian Marshal, well, they have a 2 or even a 3 inch reach, and that 1 inch reach doesn't do enough. It's the most notable weakness of this guy is its reach. And this is second, probably only to number of attacks. This guy has 3 attacks per action, so he's coming in at most with 6. If you buff him with, say, the Universal Double to get +1 attack, he goes to, 7 or 8 attacks, and that's fine. But as standard, he's a little bit low on the attack side, and that can bite you in the arse. Let's be fair here. It doesn't always go well. And then finally, there's plenty of other allies. There are 4 allies, like bespoke Warcry, not leader adjacent allies in Warcry for Chaos. And they are all very good. And the Fomoroid Crusher is very good too. Let's not beat around the bush here. But there's other options. And I feel like the Crusher can sometimes get left behind. when compared to other options, and that's a bit of a shame. But you know, I've already, but you know, that's how it goes. I think they're all fairly balanced, but my preference tends to be away from the Crusher a little bit. But with all that out of the way, let's move on to reactions and abilities. And I've already touched on these somewhat, but let's get into more detail here. Starting with the reaction, which is called Unthinking Destruction. Okay, it does the following. So, a fighter can make this reaction after an enemy fighter finishes a move action on an open platform, and within 3 inches horizontally and 5 inches vertically of this fighter, the Fomoroid Crusher. The controlling player for each fighter, so it can actually impact your own guys if you're on the same platform, within half an inch of an edge of that platform must take a falling test, and then on a 1 or 2, that fighter falls, and then it takes impact damage. So, this reaction is situational at best, and that's really being generous to it. So what holds this ability back? Well, it's heavily terrain dependent, which means some boards you will never get to use this. Not all boards have platforms, not all boards have vertical terrain. It's just a fact of the matter. Sure, the Into the Gnarlwood expansion and the Sundered Fate box, of course, come with platform terrain. That's the thing that exists. But not everyone has that. Not everyone will use that. And furthermore, no one's going to always use it. You know, if you've got options for the terrain, you want to branch out and do other things with your terrain, have an interesting board state, you know? So there's not a guarantee that this will do anything on all boards, which makes it very unreliable. And even when it does come up and you can use this, the downside of it is that it's not reliable in rules. So it's not reliable for board state. It's not reliable in rules. There is you've got a 1 in 3 chance of it even working for one. So they have a 1 in 3 chance of falling, but then impact damage from falling isn't guaranteed either. So you could shake a tree, a guy could maybe fall out 1/3 of the time. They're still not guaranteed to take damage. So you've wasted an AP, an action point, to shake a tree or shake a building or rustle a bridge or some crap, and it might not do anything. And if it does do something, it still might not cause damage. And then you've got the elephant in the room. Okay, so a third elephant is in the room, and that is simply the fact that the opponent can play around it. You know, the opponent can just not climb on terrain near you. They might just move to somewhere else. They don't have to be on a platform, and you know, they can play around it. The Fomoroid Crusher is a mighty model with a great presence on the board, but if you're sticking close to terrain to react with this, then, or sticking close to relevant terrain to react with this, you're harming yourself more than anything else. And especially when the Fomoroid Crusher has very limited ways to actually attack things on elevated platforms, its 1 inch reach really comes into play here. And this is meant to be a way to sort of like make up for that, like shake the tree, they fall down, you can attack them, kind of thing. And yeah, it's fun. No, it doesn't work that way. I don't think this is very good. I think there are far better uses for AP, mainly just moving. Climbing the tree, for Christ's sake. The Fomoroid Crusher isn't mounted. This guy could just climb onto the platform if it's possible and just bap them on the head, and that is reliable. That is actually reliable. And heck, they might still fall from that because you've smacked them on the head. So like, you know, no, it's not good. This is probably the biggest weakness of the Fomoroid, that his reaction is so underwhelming. But that's just a reaction. There are other things that make the Crusher fantastic, and these are, my god, the abilities are so good. Our first ability is Bloody Trophy. It does the following. So, a fighter can only use this ability if an enemy fighter has been taken down by an attack action made by them this activation. Add 1 wild dice to your saved wild dice. This is good. This ability is really, really nice. So, abilities that interact and manipulate your resources or your ability dice are always worth looking out for. Always, always good. And Bloody Trophy is no exception, okay? But Bloody Trophy in particular is something special, okay? More so than other abilities of this ilk. So hear me out, okay? So there's a cost to taking allies, and that cost is dilution. It's not obvious, but it's there. It's dilution of resources, okay? You take your ally, they get none of your faction's generic abilities, okay? None. And this essentially gives you a extra slab of things you can do in a turn, and this can dilute your turn. This can take what your faction wants to do on paper and then mess that up quite substantially. It can analysis paralysis could come into play here. Things like just not having the resources required to do what your faction wants to do, and then maybe or alternatively having the resources to do your faction stuff, but not having the resources to really support the ally. A lot of things come into play here, and your dice noticeably get stretched thinner with allies. Yeah. The Fomoroid Crusher uniquely does not suffer from this as badly because it can create dice. It can make more dice. It creates wild dice and it kills things. And sure, it's only one wild dice, but that one wild dice increases your dice pool to 8 as opposed to 7. If you have a twist that gives you 2 wild dice a turn, you now have 9. So depending on what format you're playing, you could have up to 9 ability dice once you include wild dice to play with. That's huge. You can do so much here. You can give your army extra doubles, triples. It makes quads easier to get. It makes getting everything easier to get. Your dice go so much further. The Fomoroid Crusher doesn't quite pay for itself, but it goes far beyond what other factions and other allies do. And it can really, even if you don't use the Fomoroid Crusher for anything else but as its stat block and this ability, you will get so much value out of Bloody Trophy because it secures the future of your next turn. As you're making your position better, you are getting an advantage over your opponent that is incredibly rare. Very few factions have access to ability dice manipulation. Very few. And this lets you put that into any Chaos faction. Supremely powerful. Do not underestimate this. This is almost the reason to take the Crusher. Out of everything else here, I think that the Crusher and its ability to generate more dice is humongous in a way that cannot be underestimated, especially on a thing with such a hefty body and a stat block with it. I'll leave it there because, bit of a rant going on there. So we'll put a pin on that. Okay, it's very good. Let's move on to some more things. So we have Hurl Masonry. Okay, so where do we go from something as excellent as Bloody Trophy? Okay, where do we go from there? And we drop the Utility Act and we go for more damage. Okay, and Hurl Masonry does the following. A fighter can only use this ability if they are within 1 inch of an obstacle. Pick a visible enemy fighter within 8 inches of this fighter and then roll a dice. On a 2 or 4, allocate 1 point of damage to that fighter, and on a 5+, allocate a number of damage points to that fighter. So Hurl Masonry is a fairly standard double. You get these chip damage abilities on most factions, and seeing it here is not a surprise, really. It's one of the most common kinds of ability archetypes. And being able to trigger it on a 2+ makes it really reliable. Many of these are on a 3+. So 2+ means you're only going to fail 1 out of 6 times. It has that 1 in 3 chance of dealing more damage. So you really want to use a high double on this, okay? Like throw something like a 5 or 6. And then this will drastically increase your Crusher's damage per action, because of course abilities don't cost an action. You could go into combat, bap, 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 and have some fun, and then go, make sure you pull it off, boosh, guy dies or does more damage. It's a nice buff to damage, and even the chip damage is nice. It's not going to do. It's not going to be your priority ability. I would absolutely say that this is more of a ability that supports the idea that you want to keep the Crusher near terrain. Does this make the unthinking destruction reaction good? No. I can see what they're trying to do here. They're trying to make you stick to terrain and get benefits from being near that terrain. I don't think it's worth that. I don't think it's worth the effort to do that, and I don't think this ability itself is necessarily worth going out of your way to use. It is good though. It is a nice damage buff, and it can, when you don't want to use Bleed Trophy, you can use this to go back and just do some more damage. Okay, it's a more damage. It's more of a damage source. It's solid. It's okay. It's okay. And the Fomoroid Crusher's final ability is called Rampaging Charge. It's the final ability, and it is the only triple of the bunch, and it does the following. Until the end of this fighter's activation, the next time this fighter finishes a move action within 1 inch of an enemy fighter, pick a visible enemy fighter within 1 inch of this fighter. Allocate a number of damage points equal to the value of this ability. So this has a lot of similarities with Hurl Masonry. A lot, as in they are almost the same ability. In terms of damage output, at least. This is better. I would say this is much better. It is a triple, and you want a high triple to get the most out of it. However, you can use this to move and deal damage. So, of course, one of the downsides of all models is that if you have to move to get into combat, you get less damage. This is a way of doing damage whilst on the move. You can move in and do up to 6 damage. It's a nice hit. It's a solid hit with a high triple. And it can just help you just, ensure a kill. I can kill a skink, I think. I'm pretty sure I can kill a skink. So it can even kill certain things if you run into them. So it's fine. It does good. It does good damage. And I think the biggest win here is that there is no RNG. So, of course, the Hurl Masonry hits on a 2. That's fine. And it will unreliably do lots of damage. So this guarantees a hit, and it will reliably do the damage it says. It'll always do the damage. It'll always do between 1 and 6 damage based on the dice used to do it. It is very reliable, very strong. Is it better than Bloody Trophy? No, it really isn't. Nothing is better than Bloody Trophy, but this is still solid. Sometimes you don't want to, sometimes you can't play the utility game, you just need to do damage, and this is where this comes into play. You run the guy in, the Crusher in, boom, massive damage, smack with the club or with the rock, thing dies. Great. It has a place in the Crusher's lineup, and it does help it have a bit more of a presence on the board that it would otherwise lack because of its 1 inch reach, if that makes sense. Overall, the abilities here are all solid at worst and outstanding at best. The clear winner is obviously Bloody Trophy, and since it provides so much power on the resource end of things, and not many factions have that innate ability to manipulate dice. I think the Dark Oath Savages are the ones that immediately pop to mind. They can do it, but very few can. And the Crusher allows all Chaos factions to do that. It's very powerful, noticeably powerful in a lineup that is otherwise quite solid. So, but now we've got all that out of the way, we need to discuss the stats. The stats of the big boy himself, okay? And we'll start, as we normally do, with the defensive stats. Okay, this guy is chunky. And I mean, this guy's really, really chunky. We're talking about this guy eats like a daily butter bar or 3, and his thickness represents that. He has an outlandishly high toughness of 6. Which is the second highest toughness in the game. Crazy. Most things will win this guy on a 5+. I mean, I'm going to come on a limb. You will rarely find anything without some sort of buff that will be able to hit the Fomoroid Crusher and not hit on hit it on better than a 4+. And next to nothing is better than a 4. It's either a 5 or a 4, mostly a 5, occasionally a 4. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that hits on a 3. And this is then complemented by 35 wounds. 35 wounds. Huge. Incredible. you can ignore most damage, and the damage you do take, you barely care. That's a massive damage pool. You can take so much damage. The Crusher is beefy as all hell, but do be aware it can get bogged down. And the bane of this guy is being swamped by throwaway chaff, especially throwaway chaff that have a lot of attacks. So I'm talking about things like the Rotmire Creed Mirefolk Outcasts, they get 4 attacks. Or the, I believe, Gore with 2 hand weapons, I believe they get 4 attacks as well. So anything with 4 attacks suddenly becomes fairly nasty because they're fishing for crits. They're going to run in with a bunch of chaff and then attack you 4, 8 times, 10 times maybe in some cases, to try and fish for crits and chip you away with those crit damage, not really caring about the little piddly 1 hits that get through. So that is a weakness of the Crusher, is that its huge pool doesn't necessarily scare opponents away. What it'll do is it'll encourage opponents to run into you with things you don't want the Crusher fighting. You want the Crusher generally to fight bigger things, to utilize its incredible stats to put a smackdown on tough things your faction otherwise couldn't take. And its defensive stats encourage the opponent to prevent you, naturally encourage your opponent to prevent it from happening by simply swamping you. So bear that in mind. But then we do have a little saving grace. Okay, the Crusher has movement 5. It's really good because the average movement speed in Warcry is 4. This allows the Crusher to outrun, chase down, and avoid most things in the game. Of course, there are things that are faster than 5. They are rare, and most things are slower than you, so you can often chase things down. You have that advantage in movement to avoid these sticky situations, to force your presence on a certain parts of the board. Very, very strong, especially when rushed. You bump up to a whopping of movement 6, and this lets you really get around. A 12-inch move a turn with rush is very, very strong. But even if you don't do that, you've still got the movement 5, very, very strong. And then we have the offensive stats, and this is where the guy really comes to his own. The Crusher has barrels in with strength 6, okay? Damage 4 minimum, critical hits of 8. This guy's a monster. He hits ridiculously hard. Very few things in the game can stand up to this. Monsters struggle to stand up to this. I'm talking like things like the only monster with a better damage track than this is maybe the Chimera, who comes with 5-10 damage, but I think has lower strength. Like, very few things can compare. In a straight up fight, this guy just wins. His strength is higher than most things, his toughness is higher than most things, his damage is higher than most things. Absolutely incredible. Then, of course, 3 attacks. 3 attacks is not great, but 6 when stationary, 8 with the universal double popped. And that does damage, that does work. That will kill things. That will kill just about anything. On average, you should kill anything that is not elite infantry. Like, if they've got, like, so how wounds tend to work is, it's like usually like 8, 10, 12 is the standard for chaff. That's like chaff to frontline infantry. The Fomoroid Crusher on average kills all those in one turn. Theoretically, you could actually kill all of those in one action. So it could kill 2 of them. On a fairly reliably, it'll kill 2 in that range of wounds. And then even characters aren't safe. With 6 attacks when stationary, you will kill most characters who have about 20 wounds. This guy just kills. He slaps. He goes in. Things die. Excellent. Excellent. The only thing that'll give you trouble, and this is where the Fomoroid Crusher does fall off, heavily falls off, is anything with toughness 6. So the Crusher is designed to kill everything but things that are toughness 6 and above. Because his attacks are so low, having anything reduce your chance to hit is horrible. So going from hitting on 3s, hitting on 4s, or even on 5s against toughness 7 opponents like Annihilators, not a good place to be. The Crusher really struggles. Against those things, you want to throw your chaff. You want to do what people will do to you, put chaff against those. Do not put the Crusher against things that are supremely tough. It's not worth it. You will not get value. You want the Crusher to crush things, ideally toughness 5. Toughness 5 is that sweet spot, but even things weaker than that are fine. But toughness 5 is what I would say is your pinpoint target, you know. Toughness 5, you're still on those 3s, they're valuable units for the enemy. Go in, bap, they go down. Beautiful. The Fomoroid Crusher, is it any good? Yes. Absolutely yes. The Crusher is a beast on the tabletop, a true beast, packing outstanding stats that carry it way further than its abilities would suggest. Then that one ability, Bloody Trophy. Oh my god, Bloody Trophy. So good. There are very few concessions you have to make to bring the Crusher. This thing can go into just about any list and do very, very well. And Chaos love it. You know, all the allies are good. I'm going to say right now, all the allies are good, and the Crusher is excellent in its own way. It is fairly cheap. Its stats are great. It has a very strong double, and it does work. It always does work. For 260 points, it's the price of a Doom Bull. You know, I think it's actually cheaper than a Doom Bull, and that is the best, one of the best Chaos Lords in the entire game, like Chaos Leaders in the game. And this guy, you know, he matches them stat for stat, just about, and then his abilities are fantastic. It can keep pace with some of the best things in the entire game, and for a fairly low cost. I'm not gonna lie, 260 points might sound expensive. It's not that expensive. It's cheaper than the Marshal. You'll probably get more use out of the Crusher than the Marshal, in both damage and utility here. So I will say the Crusher is not my favorite ally, but I am never left wanting when I do take it. This thing is an absolute workhorse, okay? I have my preferences. Everyone will have their preferences here. Not everyone will always take the Crusher. No one should always take anything, but the Crusher never disappoints. So that is the end of the video, and thank you if you made it this far, you absolute legends. I have had a great time talking about the Fomoroid Crusher. This guy's great. I am back. I'm glad to be back making videos. A week was too long. A week was too long to be gone, and I'm back to be back at work. And you know, I hope you like this setup. I want to do something a bit different, so I'll give it a go. I don't know if it's any good. If you like this new format, let me know. I feel like this will let me make videos faster and let you put a face to the name, sort of thing. I don't know. I think it's pretty cool. But if you like what you've seen and what you've heard, what you've watched, then please leave a like, a comment, and subscribe. It helps the channel immeasurably. It helps the channel fight against the YouTube algorithm and really get seen. You know, there's just not enough Warcry content in the world. I hope that my content can help satiate the desires of people like me who want more Warcry content. The reason I made this channel was because I wanted to see more content. I wanted more Warcry content, and when it didn't exist, I decided to make it myself. So let me know in the comments if you like the format, if you like the video, and what you want to see next. The next 3 videos are locked in stone. We're doing the Myrmidon and the Sphere ranks next, and then I think the Horns of Ashut are final. So that's like the next batch of things coming up. But yeah, after that, we are open for suggestions. I think I've had more people suggest the Scions of Flame over anything else. So the Scions of Flame could be after the Horns of Ashut, but let me know. There's always more things to do. There's plenty of Warcry stuff, and there's more things coming out all the time. So let me know, and I'll make it a reality. Until then, I will sign off. Thank you for watching, you absolute legends. I will see you next time. Ta-ra.